I was watching yet another podcast featuring Elon Musk today. Last time I spoke to you guys about a podcast that he appeared on with a guy by the name of Lex Friedman who talks a lot about AI. Today was Elon Musk's second appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast. You guys probably know Joe Rogan. He has a lot of interesting people on his podcast, including Jordan Peterson and other interesting folks. So there's a clip that Joe Rogan, I guess, cut out of his, I guess, because the podcast was like 2 hours long. So there's like a 20-minute clip or 25-minute clip that he cut out where they spoke basically about strictly something that I mentioned last time when I spoke about this. And it's a project that Elon Musk has undertaken, I think a couple of years ago. It's called Neuralink. And I mentioned that the project is, and you guys could go back and watch this video, that the project is connected to basically what in Hebrew is called Tiyat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead, in particular the component that involves keeping, I guess, the Neshama alive or consciousness alive, or the fact that the Neshama doesn't, the Neshama is eternal, doesn't die. Only the body dies, right? So, finally, after kind of, I guess, being kind of mums the word on the project, or I guess being sworn to secrecy about the project, or swearing himself to secrecy since it's his project, Elon Musk finally gave at least some details about it. Um, and it's crazy. He started getting into the whole, physically how the mechanism would work. He's talking about, basically implanting a chip in somebody's skull, which is kind of like, just the thought of it is like kind of, it creeps me out. It's very, I mean, it's sci-fi, but it's also very like, yeah, it's out there. And he said that it would be like something akin to like, like a chip that's flush with your skull, and you're basically, it's essentially collecting data. Not only it's collecting data, but it can help to, how should I put it, deal with, somebody has a brain injury, or somebody had a stroke, or somebody had this and that and the other, Alzheimer's, and it basically helps to compensate for whatever lack your brain has, right? How they're going to do this, I have absolutely not the faintest idea. But the point is, they got into a part in the discussion where he was talking about, and Joe asked him about, you know, just the very idea of consciousness and how everything we're experiencing right now, for example, it might be a simulation, and how, for example, our memories, and actually Elon mentioned this. Elon came back with, well, we have memories, right? But we can't remember all of our everything that happened, all of our memories, right? As well as, let's say, a camera or a what is it called, a phone can record them and can remember them and can recall them. It's all stored on, so to speak, an archive. So he's saying basically that this chip would store that all on some archive, and we can, whenever we want, we can recall that memory and remember it like this. We want to remember something that happened, I don't know, 1990, at this time, at this day, whatever, and we could just, like, I don't know how he's going to do this, visually and interface wise, but essentially we're gonna be able to recall that memory. It's almost like, if you guys see the movie Total Recall with Schwarzenegger, that's basically what he's talking about. And then they got into a discussion about, Joe mentioned the story of, this happened recently, supposedly. I didn't see this, but a monkey, there's like a video of a monkey on a motorcycle, and that monkey's riding on a motorcycle, and then it jumps off the motorcycle and steals a baby. And Joe is like, well, it seems to me that the monkey premeditated this act, to steal this baby and drag this baby and do this thing. And it was like it was basically something that, akin to what a human would do, premeditated, God forbid, like murder or something like that. So then he asked Elon, he's like, Elon, so here's a question: this monkey has consciousness, like we do, right? And Elon was like, yeah, on some level. He said, this is the key. He said, on some level, this monkey has consciousness. On some level, that monkey has consciousness. Which brings me to, again, back to square one of what Elon is missing, and what a lot of people are missing, who are in that space, are missing in the conversation, which is what Kabbalah and Hasidut talk about, which is basically what's called levels what I would call, it doesn't use this language, but I would say levels of consciousness or levels of being or levels of, the language that he uses is a nefesh, neshama, all of these things. And essentially, so both us and the monkey, what Kabbalah talks about and Hasidut talks about, we both have consciousness. The monkey has consciousness, we have consciousness, right? The difference is that, and we both have a soul. The monkey also has a soul. The difference is that human beings have a higher level soul, which is a neshama, a nefesh. And I mean, it gets into like the technicalities of it. There's levels, and it's actually called the nefesh chaya, the living soul. So what that means is that separates us from a monkey. How does it separate us from a monkey? We have something that a monkey doesn't have. We have the concept of free will, free agency. We have, even if you come to a person and he's a moral relativist and he tells you, I believe in this and that and the other, and they have this like arbitrary system of values and whatever, at the end of the day, they still have something called free will, which in Hebrew called behira, right? Animals don't. They do not. You come to an animal and you say kind of like, you're going to choose this path in life or that path in life, and here's the consequences for that and here's the consequences of that. Well, you could come into me and say, well, dogs, they kind of know if they do X, Y, and Z, they know that they're going to have a it's like there's going to be a punishment for this action. But I think it's more with dogs, it's more kind of like programmed, or if you want to call it Pavlovian, where it's like, if the dog knows if it does X, the result is going to be Y. He's going to get hit or something, or he's going to get punished. If it doesn't do that, the result is going to be like that. With human beings, it gets a little more complex, right? Who do we marry? Where do we work? Where do we live? And then with human beings, we start getting into like, calculating a few steps ahead. Like, oh my God, if I do this, it's going to lead to that, and then that's going to lead to this, and then and you always meet people. I have friends like this. I'm myself this way, where you just start like thinking too much about something, and you start calculating too much, and thinking about all the possibilities, all of the variants, all of the outcomes, and you can think your way into just basically an action, right? Animals don't have that. Animals act primarily based on instinct, right? Can you imagine if human beings just did everything we did was based on our first instinct or our first intuition, or if we followed, or actually if we have like a strong intuition, like for example I do, and sometimes I'm guilty of like not following my intuition, and then when I don't, I kick myself. But it's one of those things where it's like, that's because why? Because I'm a human being and I have consciousness, a higher level consciousness, and despite my strong intuition, and despite the fact that I should follow it, my brain kicks in, and all of my calculations kick in, and all of my, whatever kicks in, my Jewish Ashkenazi neurotic thoughts, right? And I start, oh, what if this, what if that, what if I do this, and what if I marry this girl and it ends up being like that, and then, she has her parents are like this, and her family's like, just giving you an example, right? Or if I live here with her and it's going to be like that, and then my parents will come, it's like this whole web of stuff, right? That doesn't even exist yet, and it may not, unless I think about it so much that I just basically project the energy into the universe, and that's another level. Human beings have that ability to think about something, just like Hashem thought about the world into existence. He thought about the world, then he physically created it, right? The same thing with human beings. We can think about something. Sometimes we don't even have to do anything physical. We can think about it and it manifests and it pops up, into existence, or something happens and one thing leads to another and we're like, whoa, I was just thinking, or we think about a person and they call us, right? You ever have that happen to you? That's some powerful stuff, ladies and gentlemen. And human beings have that ability, um, which I like to call super consciousness. Animals do not. As far as I know, animals do not have that ability, right? So yeah, like in all these conversations, what I notice is that this is basically what even somebody like an Elon Musk, at least openly, this is what he is missing, right? He's not mentioning this, but I have a weird feeling that a lot of these people are thinking about these things. These thoughts, what I just mentioned to you, they do cross their mind. It's just that they're afraid to say them out in the open because I guess they don't want to, so to speak, discredit themselves, or they don't want people to think they're crazy, or they just lack the lashon, they lack the language to be able to explain it. Meaning, again, if you didn't learn Hasidut and Kabbalah and even like Buddhism on some level, but like primarily what I'm talking about, which is the secret part of Torah, coming up on Lag BaOmer, Zohar. If you didn't learn that, if you didn't learn Hasidut, Jewish philosophy, even just certain books on Jewish philosophy, you lack the language to be able to explain what it is that you're thinking about, what it is that we're talking about here, right? It's funny. I was just talking to a rabbi, a Chabad rabbi, who saw my videos, and he told me, yeah. And I told him, like, there's parallel conversations happening. There's a conversation happening between you and I, where we have that language and we can talk about these things in the language of Kabbalah and Hasidut and the Tanya, all these kind of books. And then there's these conversations happening in the science world and these realms, what's called the IDW, the intellectual dark web, where they're lacking that language. And he told me, you know what, man? Um, let's just keep going the way we're going. Let's do our thing. Let them do their thing. He goes, either at some point we will converge, or what's going to happen is him being a Lubavitcher, he told me, or Mashiach. The cardinal thing is always, so to speak, the trump card, or Mashiach is going to come and he's gonna fill the gaps for them, right? Listen, I don't know if it's going to be that simple. I really don't. I hope it's going to be halavai. It's going to be that simple, right? That one day I don't know, Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan and Elon Musk and I don't know what's that other guy, Brett Weinstein, not the other Weinstein. They're sitting and talking about AI, right? And having this amazing conversation, and then all of a sudden Mashiach comes and he's like, "Oh, by the way, guys, this is fantastic, but here's the explanation for what it is that you guys are talking about, and here's this book that talks about this and Nefesh Chaya and Neshama and Yehida and all of these things, and animals are like this and human beings are like that. And yes, we are in a simulation, but it's not the way that you're thinking about. There is a soul, and it's above what you think is consciousness. There's a Shem that created all this, and he blew the neshama into your body, as it were. Mr. Hakimpur, the answer to your question is the answer to your question. I'm going to keep it as short and as least information. My uncle has this phrase: "Do not volunteer information." For the past 2 weeks, I've been working on what you're asking me about, like a crazy person, to the point where I am becoming, once again, this is the newest cycle of my bitterness. Not bitterness, but the newest cycle of, let's say, my frustration with the whole shidduch system in the Orthodox world. And I am, I go through this ebb and flow where, like, I start and I go like crazy and I talk to people in shadchanim and da. And then the whole process frustrates me and I get very upset. I'm very sensitive about these things, and then I stop, right? So now I'm going through that process of where I'm trying to do the tikkun of where I even despite the fact of getting upset, despite the fact of being frustrated, I'm trying not to stop. I'm trying to have an emunah and to say, Hashem, you're going to help me with this, and it's going to happen, and, B'ezrat Hashem. So I hope it happens before Mashiach comes, but you know what? Maybe Mashiach can find me, can point her to me, because I have no idea. Listen, I don't even know at this point, what does this woman look like? What are her values? Where does she live? How old is she? I could not tell you any of that stuff, man. I think I know. I have an age range. I have you know, an idea pretty much in my head, at least, of what this woman would be, what her values would be, where she would be hold on this issue, on that issue, and how she wants to raise the kids, and where she wants to live, and blah, blah, blah. I think I know, right? We always think we know. It's like an MTV, that show, real life. We think we know, we have no idea, right? At this point today, I just was at the Kotel. I said, Hashem, I have, I tried. You see I've tried. You see I've been trying. You know everything. You see everything. I can't get anything past you, Hashem. And I said, you know what? I throw my hands up. I wave the white flag. Not that I give up, but like I'm just waving my flag. And it's all you. It's not asking me the question, what doesn't work? What doesn't work, it's not a question of not working, it's a question of where I am on the cultural, how should I put this, on the cultural spectrum of this whole Jewish world. I came to Orthodoxy when I was 31 years old. I started essentially a new life, which includes dating. you may not know this, or maybe you do. People like myself on the totem pole, in terms of dating in the Orthodox world, are considered basically like, you know, we're second class citizen. Let's put it that way. That's the best term I can use for that, and that's that. And that's how we're treated by everybody from shadchanim to rabbis to just people in the community. Yeah, that's how it is. At least that's been my experience. Maybe, yeah, who knows? Maybe that's just my experience. Maybe it's me. Who knows, man? But in any event, that's and it's made it very difficult. Not to say that I haven't met anybody and I haven't dated, and I haven't come close to so to speak, um, you know, finalizing the deal as it were. But it's been very difficult. How can you say to yourself, "Oh, a guy like you, this, that"? Listen, it doesn't matter who you are. It's hard. It's hard out there, man. No, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. Let's hear it. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, my friend. Yeah, exactly. Dmitry Schenkelbach. I absolutely agree with you. If Hashem can make you, Hashem can make you a wife. I told this to. It's funny. I have conversations with my family, and they say, "Well, you're locking yourself into a very specific corner, right? You're looking for this, you're looking for that, but she also has to be like this, and da, da." And I say to them, well, listen, if Hashem made me the weirdo and the kind of very specific person that I am, then he definitely made my wife, or somebody who kind of like fits to who I am, right? So that I agree with. It's just a matter of where the heck is this person, where in the actual flip is that person. But yeah, but I digress. Since our friend Mordechai asked me the question, I what's it called? I gave him an answer. The best answer I can give you in a short span of time, but requires a whole other video separate, which I may not even make because lest I go on a rant and sound like I'm whining, which I don't want to do. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully Mashiach can come and illuminate these guys, kind of conversations, and hopefully he can fill in the gaps for them. Hopefully, even if Mashiach doesn't come, maybe the gaps will be filled, because at the end of the day, it just seems like Elon Musk is embarking on something where he himself, just the way he talks about it, doesn't really know what the end game here is. He doesn't know what the process will lead to. He's kind of iterating. He has kind of a general plan, but at the same time, like, he doesn't know. Maybe it'll come out in something like, in Terminator 2, Skynet. Maybe it'll come out like something in Blade Runner, these androids. Uh, maybe it'll come out like this movie. Maybe that. Mordechai, I just said this earlier in the video. I can tell you from up and down, left and right, what I think I'm looking for, and then none of it's going to matter when I meet the person that I'm actually looking for. So the short answer to you is, I know it. I'll know it when I see it. Okay, I'll know it when I see it, and she'll know me or it when she will see it. Hopefully, B'ezrat Hashem. But yeah, or as our friend Dimitri said, if you can make me, if you could, or as they said in the movie Dodgeball, if you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a dodgeball. If Hashem can make me, he can make me a wife. Okay. Actually, somebody recently wrote, I don't remember where it was. I think it was like a non-Jewish person. He wrote something like, no, it was somebody they wrote it in Hebrew, it translated really funny into English. May Hashem, something like, not formulate, but mold, or I don't know. It was like something like, the person basically said like, something akin to like, May Hashem, create. It sounded like something out of like Weird Science, where you just basically like, you go on the computer and you like put every single feature that you want in the person that you're looking for and their spouse, and that's what you get, right? So it's like basically what the person was saying is like, may Hashem formulate this person to your liking. I'm just like, oh my God, dude, like, is this what we've come to? Like, we've now I'm doing like AI, I'm creating my own Neuralink wife, it's like Elon Musk of shidduchim. I don't know. I don't even know how we got on this like overlapping topics of like Elon Musk, artificial intelligence, and shidduchim, and creating wives or creating husbands. If you're a woman. Yeah. And anyway, in any event, so yeah. Listen, It's an interesting conversation that's being had in these spheres in what's called the IDW, as my friend liked to put it on last Shabbat, intellectual dark web. And then we're having this parallel conversation with actually I forget the rabbi. It's a rabbi who called me. He is he's the assistant rabbi of Poway Synagogue. Poway Synagogue, you guys remember Rabbi Goldstein? He's the one that got his finger shot off by an anti-Semite who came into the shul. So the rabbi that called me, who saw my videos, is his assistant rabbi there. He actually wasn't there when this happened. But we had a very nice conversation about all of this. He told me actually his father, this assistant rabbi, the younger guy, his father is writing a book about AI. His father used to work in Wall Street and did like AI back in the 80s. And it's funny because my father also is interested in AI and he also worked as a software guy, IT guy in Wall Street. So I said, listen, I want your father to meet my father and I want all of us to have Shabbos dinner and, one of these days, B'ezrat Hashem. And we're having our conversation, and these guys are having their parallel conversation. And I think at some point, I have a weird feeling sooner or later, some point it's gonna converge because one of these guys, one of these Jewish guys who's into AI and all these conversations is bound to go to a Shabbos meal somewhere in Chabad or wherever, and this has to come up if it hasn't come up yet. And you know what? It's got to be taken to the next level. It can't just be a thing where like people are having surface level conversations about this. Some point, some Chabad rabbi and one of these guys, one of these PhD, MIT, whatever guys, they're gonna have sit in the Shabbat oneg, over some cookies and some mizona, some coffee, and they're gonna have a conversation until 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning about this very thing that I just brought up, and it's gonna begin. We're gonna get somewhere with this. I'm telling you. I have a weird feeling. Statistics dictates that this has to happen. It's a numbers game. It's a law of averages, as it were. So Hashem, hopefully, Yeah, what Mordechai is saying, Noah, you are not complaining. Your honesty is admirable and surely helps others that are hearing. Listen, there are other people. I'm not the only person that's going through this, by the way. Just so you know, I'm really not. Even my friend who grew up Orthodox is going through this, because there are some people who grew up Orthodox who never fit into their systems, who never fit into their what is it called, into their communities, as it were, into their cultures that they grew up in, and they're also having the same issues as I am. I just lived in Crown Heights with three guys, three roommates who are. It's funny. I was the only one who didn't grow up Orthodox out of the four of us. But these guys are like, so to speak, they're not ugly guys. They're the ugly ducklings of their community, as it were, meaning they just don't fit. Philosophically, what you call hashkafically, maybe not ideologically necessarily, but culturally, they just don't fit. They're not a fit for their societies. Whether it's a guy who grew up in Petach Tikva, Israel, or a guy who grew up in the old city, or a guy who, to American parents, or a guy who grew up in Flatbush, the typical Flatbush yeshivish thing, these guys are like, square pegs in a round hole. The irony is that all of them are still searching for whatever they grew up with, not realizing that, that's not the solution because, they might be used to that, but that doesn't mean that it fits them, right? Even me, like, I'm searching for kind of what I grew up with, which is basically a girl who grew up like I did, right? In a totally, I don't want to use the word screwed up environment, but in a, I don't know, in their 20s maybe went to whatever, I don't know, clubs but also maybe worked in the professional world and then all of a sudden woke up and decided to go on a spiritual journey, right? So maybe subconsciously I'm attracted or I'm looking for a person like that. The question is, where the heck is she? And if she does exist, is she single, right? I've met girls like that, but they're all married. They are all married, or if they're not, then whatever. Sometimes I'm just maybe not attracted, or whatever. Maybe they're not attracted to me. That's also a possibility. What's it called? So yeah, that's been really the story. And at the end of the day, we're looking for kind of what we know and somebody similar to who we are. As much as we again don't fit into that system, just as much as I did not fit into the system that I grew up in. Maybe the Russian Jewish community in America or whatever it is. Again, square pegs and round holes. Please, when you have a chance, get in contact with Moshe Geneth and JLM. Listen, man, everybody's telling me to get in contact with this rabbi and this shadchan and this person and that person, and they say this person has the solution. They have the magic pill for you, the magic bullet, and this and that and blah blah blah. At the end of the day, I'll tell you something. Unless a person knows you very, very well and knows the essence of who you are, and knows the kishkas of who you are, has gotten into your kishkas and understands you completely, not just claims to understand you, but understands you totally and all, as Mitch Hedberg, the comedian, used to say in best blessed memory, all encompassingly understands you. There's no possible way he can help you. It's like a psychiatrist. You go to a psychiatrist, right? How long do you have to sit with a psychiatrist? How many sessions do you need before you really see, what is it called? Some kind of progress, if that, right? And why do you see the progress only after a few sessions, after maybe months? Because it takes time. The guy has to get to know you. He has to get to go to know the insides of you. He has to get to know who you are, what makes you tick, what your issues are, what your positives are, what your negatives are. He cannot help you. He cannot, message you and say, "I think I know the magic pill that's going to help you in a second." Or these shadchanim say, "I think I know somebody for you." No, you don't. No, you don't know somebody for me. I'm not trying to be, again. See, this is where this conversation leads. I get frustrated. You don't. Not just me. You don't know anybody until you know them, right? No, brother, he's not a shadchan. Once you get in contact with him, you'll understand. Please give it a chance. Okay. What is this referring to? Is this referring to the conversation that I just had about Elon Musk, or is it referring to shidduchim? The point is, listen, you have to know people. In order to help them, you have to first know them. This is something that I wanted to write. Yesterday I had a conversation, a very intense conversation with the shadchan. I did something very wrong, and I admitted it to her afterwards. I apologized, and I said, I called her out. I told her, you're just throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. And, she got upset, whatever, and I apologized to her today. But the point is that, what I should have I didn't write this to her yet, but what I should have written to her is, what would be nice, what really would be nice, is if you actually asked me, not what I'm looking for, is if you actually sat down, took the time, right? I know nobody's paying you for this, but it might be nice. It might be nice to do it just once. Took the time to actually have a real person-to-person conversation with me, and just get to know me as a person, right? And to get to know my positives and my negatives. She definitely got to know my negatives because she pressed my buttons, right? She already knows my what's it called, shit side. But unfortunately, she doesn't know my good side or whatever, but my positive side. But like, the point is, like, it'd be nice, if people just got to know you, and once they get to know you, then they can help you, right? Then they can give you that magic pill or prescribe whatever, the person that they might be for you. Until that time, anything else, and as Charles Barkley would say in the Right Guard, in the Right Guard deodorant commercial in the '80s, anything else would be uncivilized. Anything else would be uncivilized, ladies and gentlemen. You know, Dimitri, keep growing and don't compromise on your values. You need to work really hard to mess up what was announced 40 days before. Listen, man, I'll tell you something. First of all, what was announced 7 days before your birth? There's an idea that obviously we have, what is it? Well, some people believe this, that we have 7 Zivugim. I'll tell you something. A few years back, I met one of them. I almost married her. And, let's just put it this way. We both screwed up. We didn't work, and it didn't take a lot of hard work. It just happened for whatever reason. And I guess it wasn't meant to be, but it is what it is. But there's not only just one person out there for you. And there's also books written about it. Is it, sometimes it has to do with, depending on our deeds, depending on our mitzvot, Hashem will choose it for us, or then, what is it called? Or we have to go and do the work, whatever it is, there's different, how should I put it, different heshbonot, different calculations and different configurations of how these things can happen, right? How it could lead to meeting your zivug, right? It's a long conversation, but actually it's funny, it falls into what I was talking about today about Elon Musk, which is free will and free agency and all these kind of things. Actually, it relates. It relates. So I think it's good we got on this topic. I'm trying to stay away from, getting too worked up, because I get worked up about it. Oh my God. It's not even I get worked up for myself. I get worked up for all the people that I see who are just, you know, I call them walking wounded people in just the frum community, singles who are just like, and there's nobody who can help them except for Hashem. Their only solution. It's like my friend says, "What's the solution, bro?" He's like, "There must be a solution to this." And he's trying to find out like some kind of what's called derech hateva solution, But I tell him, bro, there's no solution. The only solution is go grab a Tehillim and go bang your head against the wall. You know, like I did today. Go to the kotel, you know? I can't say it here when you call. Okay, when I call, I will call. I will see. Okay, I'll talk to him. I'll give him a chance. I hear you. I'm your demographic and been through the same. Listen, man. In the words of who said this? One of these African American leaders. Keep hope alive, brother. Keep hope alive. Jesse Jackson. I don't know who it was. Al not so Sharpton. I hate to quote him. Keep hope alive. Listen, I'll tell you like this. I have a weird feeling. You know, it's funny. There's all these people in their like late 30s, even 40s, who've never been married. I have a good friend who got married when he was 41. A guy. I have another good friend, a female. She got married when she was 41. She just had a kid. And you know, it's funny. The Torah talks about all these people, our forefathers, living to like some crazy age of like 120. That's why we say Ad Mei Asrim, right? So like Abraham lived to 120. That was like the par for the course. No big deal, right? So then there's other people who live till way 300, and what was it? Methuselah lived until he was 969. I have a weird feeling that like in this generation, 40 is like the new 30. You know, they talk about this, right? And yeah, I don't know. It's not such a big deal. It's not the end of the world if you get married at 40. As much as our parents would like to tell us, oh, especially you and I are both Russian Jews, and they tell us, oh, when I was 27, I already had you. When I was 23, I already got married. And I'm just like, okay, well, what do you want me to tell you, man? I wasn't raised in the Soviet Union. I wasn't raised Haredi. You know, I don't know what to tell you. I have the life that I have. I went through the stuff that I went through. It is what it is. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so I really hope that the conversations that I was mentioning earlier on, before I went off on a tangent about shidduchim, the conversations will overlap, and we will see a very, very interesting discussion, in the intellectual dark web about these things. And we'll also start talking about something that we cannot measure, which is the soul and what's called ethereal things, and what the stuff that Hashem breathed into us, and how actually it does have everything to do with what Elon Musk is talking about, which is that we're in a simulation, and we are in a, so to speak, holograph, whatever you want to call it, and we're getting there. We're getting there, ladies and gentlemen. And my rabbi Rav Dror said, when Mashiach comes, we are going to have a situation where we're not going to experience time and space as we're experiencing it now, and that's all connected to this, right? Yeah. So I hope that happens, and as that happens, I hope we all find our Zivug. I would like to say a few words in prayers, if that's okay with you. Please say your Hebrew name and mother, of course. My Hebrew name is Tzvi Hirsch Ben Devora. Thank you very much, my friend. Big tzaddik. Not easy to be honest in this world. Yeah, man. That's it, man. That's all we can have here. That's all we have at the end of the day. And again, as I always say, every podcast, the masks are being pulled back very slowly, and we're about to see a big show. In my opinion, after Shavuot, we're going to see a big show. Grab your popcorn, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yeah. I don't want to talk about politics in this video, but grab your popcorn. But you know what? It's all happening simultaneously. We're going to find out what Hashem wants from us. And we're also going to find out, we're going to find our zivugs, hopefully, sooner than later, and everything should be okay. All right. Laila Tov, and if I don't talk to you guys tomorrow, Shabbat Shalom.